Okay, so I want to go through this, and anytime you see a word question, you got to reread it at least 3 times to make sure you know what's going on. So shoebox has a volume, so volume's important, and there's the volume. The width is double the height, and the length is triple the height. Determine the height of the sandbox. So again, what are we looking for? All right, so I like to write down what you know, what you don't know, and what you need to know, I call it. So the volume is 1,000 centimeters cubed. The width is equal to 2 times the height. What else do we know? The length is equal to 3 times the height. The height's just the height, I guess. And we want to know, find height. Okay. What formula do we know that we can use? We know the volume of a rectangular prism or a box is length times width times height. So then we can go ahead and try and substitute, and there's too many variables going on here. We can only solve an equation if there's only one variable, so we have to have everything in terms of one thing. And luckily the question helps us out that everything's in terms of h. So the volume we know is 1,000. I'm going to leave the units off so I don't get confused, but remember it's centimeters cubed for the volume. The length is 3 times the height. The width is 2 times the height, and the height is just the height. So we got 1,000 equals, and when I multiply sign, number, letter to make my life easier. So the sign's positive times a positive times a positive is positive. Then the number is 3 times 2 times 1 is 6, not 7, please don't add. 3 times 2 is 6 times, there's a 1 hiding there, right? 1 height times 1 is still 6, and then we do the letters h times h times h, and we've been doing exponents so that we know that that's h cubed. Now I want h on its own. I'm going to write this to multiply. To multiply. Okay, so now I need to solve. And in solving, what I do is I want the letter by itself. So whether it's an x, which we often use, or an h, doesn't matter. So I'm going to say what is by the, I'm going to put x, but at this time it happens to be an h, doesn't matter. What is it doing? What is it doing? And then I'm going to say do opposite to both sides. Do opposite to both sides. Because I want to isolate it. I want it by itself. So I say, what's by the x? There's a 6 here. By the, in this case, it's an h. So I'm going to divide by 6 because it's multiplying. 6 times h cubed. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. And I got to divide both sides by 6 to be fair. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So on the other side, I got 1,000 divided by 6. So 1,000 divided by 6 is a horrible number. And if I pull up a calculator, just pause. So I'm going to pull up a calculator. I got 1,000 divided by 6, and it's an ugly number, 166.666666667. So 166.666. It goes on forever, really, and we're going to have to round at some point equals h cubed. Now I need to say what's by the h. Well, the h is actually, it's h cubed. So what's the opposite of cubing? Would be the cube rooting of. So I'm going to take the cube root of this side, and to be fair I have to do the opposite of the other side, cube root of the other side. So I'm going to be left with the cube root of h cubed is just h, and now I need the cube root of 166.66667. So my calculator has this cube root button right here, so cube root, and it does from the answer, and I get, whoops, that didn't work very well, clear. 1,000 divided by 6 is that, and then I can take the cube root of whatever that answer is, and I get 5.5. 5.5, and it was centimeters cubed if I put it in there, so the cube root of centimeters cubed is just centimeters, and that kind of makes sense. There's centimeters by centimeters by centimeters. Now calculator stuff, you could also do cube root of oops, I think this one has to work backwards. 166.66667, and you can get the cube root and still get the same thing. Other ones you might have to do the xth root, and sometimes it works a little bit differently, but depends on your calculator, or Excel spreadsheet works the best. Okay, so I've got h equals 5.5 centimeters. Make sure you can get the same answer before you try and do a cube root of something else, because if you can't, ask me and I'll help you with whatever you're working on. Maybe I'll pull up an Excel spreadsheet. So we know that in a spreadsheet, a cube root is the same thing as saying to the power of 1/3. So let's do this a little bit at a time here. I've got, first I had equals, I need an equal sign, 1,000 divided by, what was it, 6? And I got a number. Now I can do in my other calculation, I can do it in a different cell here. I'm going to say equals whatever's in there, and it's actually, even though it says 166.6667, but it's actually 166.66666. It goes on forever. Alright, so I'm going to have that to the power of, so little hat, bracket, 1 divided by 3, close my bracket. And that's, we know, it's the same thing as taking the cube root, and there's my 5.5. So I like using Excel for all these instead of a calculator. You can do it whatever way you want. Finally, they just asked for, we go back to the question, and since it was a word question, we should give it a word answer. It says determine the height of this shoebox. We would write in, therefore, that's a fancy way to say, therefore, the shoebox is 5.5 centimeters high. But it might have asked for the dimensions of the box, in which case you'd have to go back and say, okay, well, the height is 5.5 centimeters, but we know that the width has to be twice that, so it would be 5.5 times 2, which is 11, and the length would be 3 times 5.5, so it would be 16.5 centimeters. So we could give the dimensions of the box if we needed to. So that's really important to think about.